My name is Dr. Anne Marie Morrow. I am Associate Dean for Educational Research and Innovation at Rutgers School of Nursing. We are so pleased you can join us this morning. Our webinar today is Transforming Helplessness and is our final webinar in our 7-webinar series. I just wanted to let you know you can communicate with us via the chat if you are having any technical difficulties, and Dr. Jeanette Manchester or Marielle Rosario will assist you with those technical issues. If you have questions for me or for the panelists, please enter your questions or comments in the Q&A function located to the right of your screen so that I can see them and pose the questions to our panel. It is my pleasure this morning to welcome Dr. Donna Gaffney, my friend and colleague, who is an expert in dealing with trauma and grief. We are recording today's session, and you will be able to find the recording and associated handouts on our Rutgers School of Nursing website in 1 to 2 days. Dr. Gaffney is joined this morning by Dr. Peg Pipchek and Millie Elia. Dr. Gaffney, you will introduce your panelists. Thank you and welcome this morning.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And good morning, everyone. It was so nice to have you here, and a special shout out to the school nurses that I hear are on the webinar, so welcome. First of all, I want to check in, make sure everybody is okay. And even though I can't hear your answers, I want you to know that we're asking about you and we want to make sure that you're okay. This is our wrap up, as we mentioned, as Dr. Morrow mentioned a few minutes ago. So this is the time to ask those questions that you might have had in your heads since one of the earlier sessions. We were also trying to pull off a technological challenge. We thought Dr. Anne Hoffmeyer was going to join us from Australia, but she emailed me in the middle of the night saying that they were having, it's their fall in South Australia, and that they were having storms, and she lost her internet once, and she was hoping she would have it again, but I don't see her, and he didn't hear from her. But if she comes, believe me, we'll be putting her right into the panel presentation. So let's begin our faculty, as you've seen before. And today we're going to be talking about transforming helplessness to wholeness. And it's we've talked about so many different topics. This is hopefully we will be pulling it all together and giving you the tools that you need. We want you to also know that this is a safe place for you if you begin to feel a little uncomfortable, to take time for yourself as well. And today we're going to talk about recognizing vulnerability, reframing uncertainty and fear, how to find those best actions that really help you grow, and making a difference in your life and the life of other people, which many of you, of course, already are, and emerging from this pandemic whole and on a journey of healing and growth. And just, sorry, I'm always, Dr. Manchester likes to remind me that this PowerPoint is very sensitive on WebEx, so bear with me. So when we talk about vulnerability, the person that comes to mind that we all have been exposed to in the media and in the research that she's done is Brene Brown's work. And she defines vulnerability as uncertainty and risk and emotional exposure. And she points out that this is not a weakness by any stretch. But when the barrier is our belief about vulnerability, that we are afraid of it, that we don't want to show up, so to speak, and what happens when we can't control the outcome. So are we willing to create those courageous spaces, as she says, so we can be fully seen? And I'd like to point out that there's a link at the bottom of this slide that it's one of our resources, which you'll all be getting handouts for the resources. UCSF is doing a wonderful webinar series, and she is going to be speaking. They haven't announced yet her presentation is going to be on board. But if you go to that website, you'll find it. So so let's go to the next slide, and let me introduce Dr. Pipchick, and she is going to begin talking about uncertainty and fear.
So as Donna quoted from Brene Brown, we need to create a courageous space to allow ourselves to feel vulnerable, to feel our deep feelings. And if there's anything else you take away from what I am saying today and on Monday, it's that our feelings, as bad or as deeply dark as they may be, do not define us. They are not to be judged or moralized. They really are pieces of information about our reactions. So it's not necessary to be afraid of our feelings. They can help us, particularly even despair, to help us transform ourselves and grow in wisdom. We all have an inner healer. We know that bones can heal themselves, wounds can heal themselves through the way our body functions. Our spirit can also be healed if we allow ourselves to know that we are not alone. Whatever we are experiencing, the whole world is experiencing. Maybe not at the same time, but feelings are something that are a part of life. And it's only when we know our wholeness and see ourselves as one can we be transformed. Nature doesn't care that you're comfortable or uncomfortable, only that you can continue to grow and evolve. Next slide, please. So, deep feelings of helplessness, powerlessness, and hopelessness can lead to a sense of despair, a sense of despair, a feeling of despair. We're not talking about depression that's biological in origin. We're talking about feelings. And feelings can become a mood if we keep feeding the feelings with intellectual thoughts or worries like, oh, I'm never going to get out of this. This is the worst place I've ever been and it's never going to change. That's when it becomes a mood and can take over. Despair is a common human experience. We may feel it about our health if we get a bad diagnosis, losing a job, a marriage, lose a love life that we had, finances. But however, despair typically dissipates over time. I'll be saying more about that. But it can become a clinical depression if our bodies take over, um, in the sense of that we just can't get out of it. It's a deep discouragement and loss of faith about our ability to find meaning, fulfillment, and happiness. That we have no sense of satisfactory future for ourselves. Viktor Frankl, who was in Auschwitz and wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning, talks about despair as meaningless suffering. This is a little error in the slide. Conley is somebody who said that Frankl created a powerful formula which says that despair equals suffering minus meaning. The clinical implication here is that despair can be treated by helping the person attribute or to discover some meaning in his or her personal suffering, misery, and symptoms. Okay, can we move on? There are times when feelings of despair take over, when we feel our heart cannot break anymore. What I'm going to say here and in the next two slides is coming from um, John David White, who has written a wonderful little book called Consolations: The Solace, Nourishment, and Underlying Meaning of Everyday Words. A lot of what he says comes from and has been spoken about in depth psychology, but I like the way he, as a poet, expresses it. He has such a wonderful way with words. So when feelings of despair take over, we feel our heart not break anymore. When we feel we cannot love anymore, when our body is carrying profound pain in a way that does not seem to go away. But he says that despair is a haven. It has its own temporary form of beauty, of self-compassion. It is temporary. He talks about it as a season that comes and goes. It's not something that stays. Like, it's not as though you have a whole winter and not have a season. We're used to seasons, and that's what despair is. It's a season. It can be an invitation that we accept when we want to really remove ourselves from the hurt. We don't want to hurt anymore. We don't want to have the pain. Despair is the last protection. It's a necessary illusion. It's a place where we can hope nothing can ever find us in the same way again. And this may be what's going on now within ourselves, within our environment, as we see so many people die during COVID-19. It just feels like there's no cure, there's no way to hold this virus. It just keeps taking over and over more and more. But we can have more of a resilience if we allow ourselves to give it some meaning, that it's going to help us grow and develop in wisdom. We don't have to drown in despair. It can be a spiritual crisis that can have some relief. Carl Jung says that it can have some relief in religious faith, but at times religious faith is not viable or meaningful. So we need to find our own way through this spiritual crisis. The next slide. This is David White. He says, refusing to despair about despair itself. We need to let despair have its own natural life and take a first step into the ground of human compassion, to be able to feel compassion for ourselves as we see and understand and touch and even speak the heartfelt grief that we are feeling at this moment. It's not just despair, it's that we are not allowing ourselves to feel the hopelessness and the deep grief. Go on to the next slide. So what David White says, which is really what is being said in many different ways, the antidote to despair is not to be found in a brave attempt to cheer ourselves with happy abstracts. It's not useful to keep a positive atmosphere, a positive attitude, when it means denying our emotions. We need to pay profound and courageous attention. This is what's been said over and over. We need courage to pay attention to our body and the breath. Don't let ourselves get imprisoned with our thoughts and stories. Paradoxically, paying attention to despair itself and the way we hold it, and realize it's never ours to own and to hold in the first place. As I said earlier, it really is something that it's like a river. You watch a leaf on the river, it just moves. And that's what feelings do. They just move through us and they move through other people. So we see and experience despair fully in our body is to see it as necessary, a seasonal visitation. And the first step in letting it have its own life is to see and experience it, neither holding it or moving it on before its time. We take the first steps out of despair by taking on its full weight and coming fully in ground in our wish not to be here. We don't want to be here, but it's okay to feel you don't want to be here. We let our bodies and we let our world breathe again. In that place, strangely, despair cannot do anything but change into something else, into some other season, as it was meant to do from the beginning. Despair is a difficult, beautiful, necessary, binding understanding between human beings. It can bind us together when we feel despair. We can be caught in a fierce and difficult world where half of our experience is mediated by loss, but it is a season, a waveform passing through the body, not a prison surrounding us. A season left to itself will always move, however slowly, under its own patience, power, and volition. Next slide, please.
So I'm going to channel Anne here. We've talked about this many times. She was one of the people that that we began to talk about this many years ago, actually. And she did a lot of work with me after September 11th. We talked about well-being and resilience, and that goes hand in hand with the notion of despair, and that we have to be resilient in order to allow us to sort of float, as Dr. Pipchick said, to float with those feelings and to recognize that they're not going to last forever. So if we talk about resilience, it's really our ability to thrive, to continue to be positive, and to function despite circumstances that are contrary to that. We're not born with levels of resilience. Everybody has the capacity for resilience. So a number of people have said that building resilience is like building a muscle, that we keep working on it until it gets stronger and stronger. Holloway describes how resilient is not an inherent quality and is not simply the ability to bounce back, which I spoke about several sessions ago, that it's also the ability to learn and bounce forward. It's a personal capacity that can be intentionally fostered with resources. And the message is, we don't do this alone. We need to have the individuals, the people in our lives that really allow us to continue to strengthen. And so it's being able to cope with the challenges, cope with what we're dealing with in this pandemic, that everything is turned upside down, and trying to maintain a positive mental health. We know that flourishing under pressure is the most difficult thing we can do, but we can do it. People have done it and continue to do it all the time. Socially isolated individuals have a more limited ability to sort of access these necessary resources, really derived from all the networks that surround us. And sometimes we just have to ask ourselves the question, what can I draw on? Who is there for me? And how can I access these resources? So how do you build your resilience to remain positive and flourish and thrive under pressure? And Anne has coined a term that I think probably speaks volumes about what we know about resilience. And she uses the word fuel. We need to fuel our resilience, and it comes through our self-awareness, our self-compassion, self-care practices, relationships, and networks. So if you think about the fueling that we're going to do in our lives during these difficult times, that is what we need to bring into our experience. So self-compassion is visible and kindness towards ourselves in daily practices, self-care practices, which we've talked about from the first moment of this webinar series, but it really is the foundation. You have to look after yourself so you're strong to help other people. And then there's this work-life fit. You've heard people use the term balance before. Anne suggests that we really want a work-life fit, which is about self-awareness. How do you fit these elements into your life? And it's about taking better care of yourself so you are resilient and continue to build your resilience and act with compassion towards your patients, your colleagues, your family, and your friends. So it's about that fit that goes to with each of us. And just what does, we talk about resilience, but this is actually what it is, what it looks like. And I guarantee that all of you have these qualities. It's sometimes we think that they're not as available to us that we get stressed about it and wonder if we can deal with the situation. And this is where the reframing comes in. So we want to view change or stress as a challenge. This is something to be overcome. There are some people who are great at this. They rise to the challenge. They think about how they can solve a problem. Others have to be brought along a little bit slower or a little bit more slowly because they maybe don't think that they can rise to the challenge, but they certainly can. Cognitive flexibility, thinking outside the box. We're really struggling right now with this pandemic because we're not only thinking outside the box, there is no box for us to really relate to. A personal moral compass, and these are those core beliefs that we struggle with every single day when we don't have enough PPE, when we don't have enough staff, when the patient load is so incredibly intense. Those of you who are used to working in a situation in a school, for example, and then you can't work in the school, so you have to use other modes of communication with your families and your patients. A role model to whom we can look up to. Who is that person in your life that really, past or present, who can really address and show you the way without showing you the way in words? The ability to face our fears, and as Dr. Pipchik said, the ability to face our despair. Active coping skills, a good social network, engaging the support of others, close and secure relationships, and personal and collective, personal and collective goals. What do we have as our goals for ourselves and for our family, our school life, our work life? Self-efficacy, strengthening the effects of stress on our bodies. Past successes, don't ever doubt that you have not accomplished great things in the past. Sometimes we just have to really address those and look at those. Sense of realistic sense of control. And I think that we are all struggling with this. I especially hear from it in people who are in critical care settings because they struggle with the idea that why can't I fix this person? Why can't I make this person better? And how can I help them heal? And so what we think we should do, our assumption about how we heal people is drastically changed. So we have to be realistic about this, that we won't be able to do what we set out to do. Sense of humor, so very important. And an action-oriented approach. And instead of focusing and worrying about things, change it to a to-do list. How can I then respond to this? And also talks about the elements of resilience in individuals and communities. And I think it's fascinating how we look at this diagram so we see where it fits in and what are the elements or the things that fuel this sense of resilience. So promoting the well-being, and again, it's the same thing that we've been talking about: nutrition, sleep, exercise, and taking time to relax. I know that sounds like an impossibility right now, but 5 minutes, 10 minutes to take care of yourself, to relax, to put your feet up, to simply grab that coffee, unless, shout out to Dr. Manchester, your machine is broken. But what is it that soothes you, that allows you to sort of feel better? Have a purpose, set your goals, and work steadily towards that success. And I know that those goals seem gone right now because we can't really find them, and they seem to diminish the things that we, thinking about achieving an academic record and successfully writing papers and taking exams seems to pale in comparison to what we're doing right now. And then you have to think about, what can I do that's good enough, that given all of the things going on in your life right now, all the things going on in society, all the information, the misinformation that we hear every single day, how can we set that aside for a minute and just focus on what we can do right now? And also talks about building social capital and networks. What is social capital? Those are the people. That's the people in our lives, in our families, in our relationships, in our work setting. Social capital is just as important as financial capital as we go through this very, very difficult period. We want to nurture those positive friendships and our relationships and build on them. Understand that the networks are really, really important. Trusted people that you can ask for support and feedback, and be that trusted friend. Identify who those people are. That is the essence of social capital. And learn about mood and mind. Some of the things that Dr. Pipchick just mentioned are especially important. Understanding about feelings and emotions and despair. So how do you begin to learn about mood and mind? Is recognize what's going on with you. Practice gratitude to enhance positive feelings and calm emotions. Dr. Andy Slavitt, who is has done a lot of work and is on TV a lot, talks about how he makes decisions and feels comfortable. And he said that he ends every day with his kids in terms of looking at gratitude. What are we thankful for today? He also says a gratitude mantra as he washes his hands many, many times during the day, thinking about the nurses and the other healthcare providers who are there taking care of the COVID-19 patients. Mindfulness and meditation, again, enhances that well-being and resilience. Trusting your intuition. Sometimes those first thoughts that you have are really very important, and you need to trust and allow yourself to pay attention and listen. Knowing when to let go and walk away. That's a really hard one for nurses, because we think that we should be able to take care of everyone and interact with everyone, but sometimes it doesn't work. And so that intuition in the previous bullet point, and then knowing when to walk away and letting go. And sometimes you have to let go first and then see how that feels, and then you might have to walk away. And it might be the very best thing for your ability to resolve the issues and fuel your own resilience. Reach out when you feel negative emotions, develop your emotional intelligence, learn as much as you can about how we think and feel. There's great books. We're going to give you some wonderful resources. There's references in back of at the end of every webinar. And build your self-reflection and insight. Be honest with yourself. Really recognize how to turn that honesty on and turn the volume up on that honesty. And practice self-compassion, not self-criticism. There's enough things going on in the world where we can be criticized by a number of people. You don't have to do it. You can allow yourself to be kind to yourself, to understand that some of those thoughts are critical, and you can just push them out of the way and allow those thoughts to dissipate. So Dr. Pipchick is going to walk you through an exercise right now that has been, is really wonderful. So without further ado, I'm going to let her to sort of walk you through this.
Okay, as Dr. Gaffney mentioned, we need to reach out when we have negative emotions. So in order to do that, we have to allow ourselves to accept negative emotions and to feel self-compassion. So and we can put ourselves in that place of feeling self-compassion. We can't force it, but we can have the intention of being in a place of compassion and accepting our emotions. And this RAIN is an acronym that was developed by Tara Brach, who is a meditation teacher that has many podcasts. We have some references to her podcast, and they take the form of teachings or they take the form of short meditations. But this meditation right now, I'm going to talk about it first, and then we're going to have the opportunity to experience it. So the acronym RAIN starts with R, which is recognizing what is happening, consciously acknowledging our thoughts, feelings, behavior affecting us about any situation, about what we are feeling, what we are seeing. A is allow whatever that feeling is to be there, just as it is, letting the thoughts, emotions, feelings, or sensations we have recognize simply to be there. We're not trying to fix them or avoid them. Investigate. The I is investigate. Investigate your inner experience. That means your body. What are you feeling? Have some interest in it, kindness and care. In a non-judgmental way, be kind with yourself. And the N is to nourish with self-compassion. Try to sense what is wounded, frightened, or hurting inside of you. Offer some gesture of active care that might address this need. As Dr. Gaffney said a few minutes ago, you can meditate, you can have gratitude when you're washing your hands. And as you become familiar with RAIN, you will be able to do this very quickly, or you can spend a half hour doing it. So this experience can help you address feelings of insecurity, unworthiness, fear, whatever is going on in your life. So I ask you now to put yourself in a comfortable position, your feet on the ground. If that's what you wish to do, you can sit in a meditative position. Whatever feels comfortable for you at this moment. Be physically comfortable. Jiggle yourself around in order to feel comfortable and relaxed, but aware. Not sleeping, just aware. Feel, begin to close your eyes if that's comfortable for you, or bring your eyes down to half mast, whatever feels comfortable for you, and allow yourself to feel the aliveness, awaken to what's going on in your body. Feel the sensations that you're experiencing, tingling, tension, whatever you're feeling. And just go into whatever that feeling is. Breathe in to a softening belly. As you breathe in deeply, let your breath go all the way down to your belly and feel that fullness. And exhale. And then allow yourself to just be with your body. Recognize what is going on right now, acknowledging it, any thoughts or feelings or behaviors that are affecting you. One of the ways that we get stuck is to get into a trance of intense feelings and judging them. Right now, just allow yourself to recognize that maybe you're stuck because you have some constricting beliefs or emotions. Common signs are a critical inner voice, feelings of shame or fear, maybe even anxiety. Recognizing can be a simple mental whisper, just noting what's come up for you. Just allow yourself to recognize what you are experiencing right here and now in this moment. Try to remove yourself from everything that's outside of you, just what's going on internally. Allow the experience to be there just as it is. Means letting the thoughts, emotions, feelings, or sensation we have be recognized. Don't try to fix them or avoid them. If you are judging them, let that be there too. It doesn't mean we agree with the judgment or that we're unworthy or bad. Rather, just honestly acknowledge the arising of the judgment, as well as any painful feelings you may have. Maybe you're feeling the grip of fear. Just mentally whisper, yes, it's okay. Allow yourself to acknowledge and accept the reality of your experience in this moment. The eye of rain is to investigate with interest and care. Once we've recognized and allow ourselves to know what is arising, we can deepen our attention through investigation. Call on your natural curiosity to know the truth, to be more focused on your own present experience. You might ask yourself, what most wants attention here? How am I experiencing this in my body right now? What sensations am I having? What am I believing? What does this vulnerable place want from me right now? What do I most need? What does this place most need? Whatever the inquiry, your investigation will be most transformational. You step away from conceptualizing, judging. Bring your primary attention to the felt sense in your body. It's essential when investigating to be non judgmental, have an attitude of care and a sense of safety. Let yourself honestly connect with your hurts, fears, shame, whatever is there. The end of rain is to nourish with self compassion. Self compassion begins to naturally flow and arise in moments when we recognize that we are suffering. It comes into fullness as we intentionally nourish our inner life with self care. Sense what is wounded, frightened, or hurting inside you and what it most needs, and offer some gesture of active care that might address this need. Does it need a measure of assurance, forgiveness, companionship, of love? And if you don't feel at this moment that you have within yourself to feel love, call upon another loving being who you know might love you, a spiritual figure, a family member, a friend, or a pet. And imagine that their love and wisdom is flowing into you. Try to say to yourself, I'm here with you. I'm sorry and I love you. I love you and I am listening. It's not your fault. Trust in your own goodness. When the intention to awaken to self compassion is sincere, the smallest gesture of turning towards love, of offering love, even if initially it feels awkward, will nourish your heart. Have that intention. Now that we've finished the active steps of rain, it's important to notice your own presence and rest in that wakeful, tender space of awareness. The fruit of rain is realizing that you are no longer imprisoned in a trance of unworthiness, of fear, or in any limiting sense of yourself. Give yourself the gift of becoming familiar with the fruit, the truth, and the natural freedom of your own being. Your own being is mysterious and precious. So just sit for 1 minute with what you are experiencing. Allow yourselves to slowly come back into the room, feeling a natural movement of your hands or your toes, opening your eyes, and just slowly come back. We can proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pipchick. So take a breath and let's talk about some other ways that you can reframe the difficulties of our pandemic laden society and work, and talk about what we can share and what we have to offer each other as well as the general public. Reflective writing is a very powerful tool, and it actually starts with mindfulness and exercises similar to the one that you just experienced and fosters a sense of self-awareness through writing. Consider keeping a journal. You do not have to write for hours. You can write for 5 minutes, and keeping that journal with you or on your next to your bed or in your backpack is really important. When I work with my clients about writing things down, when they talk about their worries and their concerns and I say to them, listen, write it down, because then you don't have to hold it in your head. And so often that's what we do. We ruminate about things because we don't want to forget about them, or we want to keep trying to work them out. But if we write it down, it really commits this to paper and allows us to really continue and move forward and look at those issues. But reflective writing is talking about, is really writing about you and your experiences, and allows us to look at things in a different way, especially if you keep a journal or you write something down and then go back and look at it several months or weeks later. You can really begin to see the way it changes your own life. There are two researchers who've done a tremendous amount of work in the area of reflective and creative and expressive writing. One is Jamie Pennybaker from UT in Texas, and he is probably the person who's done the most about how we heal as a result of the work that we're doing, as a result of the words that we put on the paper, as well as the work that we're doing. And he's got an incredible website. I spoke with him actually yesterday, and he has this pandemic project where you can actually do some expressive writing and talk about how this is affecting you. Interestingly enough, he hasn't done anything yet with healthcare providers, which I suggested that he should, because we have a lot of stories to tell and a lot of experiences to share with ourselves and with the world. But take a look at his website. He also has a website where he walks you through his exercise, and it's a very simple exercise. And take a few minutes to think about some of the upheavals in your life and what's going on right now, and then just spend 10 minutes writing about it. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about punctuation. Just write, write, write. You can always go back and fix it later. And then he says, and what you do with it is your choice. You can shred it, you can crumple it up and throw it away, you can burn it, you can eat it, although he doesn't recommend that. So it's a wonderful way to look at how our words make a difference in our healing process. Louise DeSalvo has also done a lot of work, and she talks about a healing narrative. And that's what Dr. Pennebaker's work has also found, that just simply writing the words, thinking about the words, is a healing strategy. So Louise's 5 characteristics of a healing narrative are that it portrays the experience concretely in rich detail. So you write about what you're seeing, what you're sensing, what you're feeling. And I don't mean feeling as in emotions, I mean tactile sensations, what you're hearing, tasting. The richer your detail is, the more it comes to mind exactly what you experienced. And if you share it with other people, that will also facilitate that process of them understanding. It then connects feelings to events, that what was going on, that event that you've so richly described, now has feelings attached to it. It balances both positive and negative emotions, even as it describes difficulties. And I think that's something that we all need to hold on to. For as often as we are struggling with caring for COVID-19 patients, or in our own families, dealing with someone who may be ill, or ourselves, there's a lot of negative, but search for the positive. Reframe some of that. What is the positive? What one thing can you pull out of that experience that has a positive feel to it? And I guarantee that it's there. But sometimes those negative emotions overwhelm us so much that we are unable to talk about what might be positive. And that piece also needs to provide insight and reflection, that you've really thought about what you're writing. You're gaining some insight. One of the questions I ask myself when I'm facing a challenge or an event that is not a positive event, I ask myself the question, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to take away from this? How is this enhancing who I am as a person and what I can do going forward? And the healing narrative is a full and comprehensible story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm sure that many of you like to write, are probably in college or school, had, looked at those assignments to write, where you had a writing prompt and you had to respond to it. This is really a very therapeutic process. I suggest you, I'm a paper and pen aficionado, so I have lots of notebooks and lots of pens, but find what you feel will facilitate the process. I recommend longhand, although everybody tends to write lots of emails and posts, but there's something about writing longhand that really, is full circle for us. So as Dr. Hoffmeyer says, it's over to you now. We've talked about toolboxes, toolkits. Maybe we need to talk about a tool belt, something that we can take with us. So in your toolbox, your kit, or in your belt, what makes you feel hopeful? What sustains your resilience? What practices are your go-to practices? Is it rain? Is it something else? What makes up your oxygen mask, that drop down oxygen mask from this ceiling that allows you to breathe and to become allows you to heal and gives you the energy that you need to care for other people? What self-care practice can you start now? And you've actually done it with the RAIN practice. So think about those questions. What goes in that box, that kit, or in that belt? And if you're struggling to think about those things, because sometimes when we're overwhelmed, we can't think about anything that we've done good for ourselves. Think about a time that you felt exhausted, unable to care for a patient or a colleague or even a family member with your usual energy and compassion. You'll know it because people will say, oh, you're not your usual self today. What happened in that moment? And what knowledge and skills did you need to be more effective in practicing compassion? So go back and think about those moments. And another aspect of it provides us evidence that there is resilience even in the most daunting circumstances. Think about the Landmine Survivors Network. It was started by people who were who directly affected. Mothers Against Drunk Driving, started by moms who really believed that they could do something to change things. The AIDS Coalition to unleash power. The Suicide Prevention Network in South India. So these are all organizations, activism driven projects started by the people who were most profoundly affected. And I want to bring your attention to Dr. Peggy Chin's web page called Nurse Manifest. And this is a call to conscience and action to all nurses. There's a blog, Nursing Activism Project, the Civility Project, and Declaration of Solidarity and Resistance. We are all advocates and activists, and it is so extremely important for a number of reasons, not just to be a change maker, but what activism does for all of us, and advocacy. And we advocate for patients every single day. I'm talking about outside of what we usually do, something that is in our communities or in our profession. Activism generates a number of psychological benefits that we aren't even aware of. Our strengthened relationships, work-life career balance, building identity, empowerment, sustained commitment, enhanced self-esteem. All of these have been addressed in the literature and found that people really become much more proactive in terms of their own health and their own healing. Some authors have even described activism as the antidote to secondary trauma, to vicarious trauma. It helps us build this vicarious transformation and resilience. Writing does the same thing, as I mentioned. So it's finding new purpose and transformation through community advocacy and activism. You know, so many communities are doing incredible, wonderful things, and they're taking action. That is really the counterbalance to, you know, everything that we're experiencing during this pandemic. So I really urge you to think about, outside of your profession, outside of the work that you do on a daily basis, what is it that you could get involved in that would allow you to advocate and bring your skills, bring your talents for people? Maybe it's the food bank, maybe it's writing for your local newspaper. Think about the things. There's lots and lots of activities going on. And if you need to get some ideas, all you have to do is follow several people on Twitter or Facebook and see what they're doing. And of course, I think I mentioned this last time, John Krasinski's Some Good News 20-minute weekly YouTube broadcast really shows all of the incredible things that people are doing. And finally, before Millie does an exercise with all of you today, I want to share with you an incredible story that is going to be in the New Yorker. It's called A City Nurse. This is a story. The story is written by the individual who took the picture. So her name is Karen Cunningham. She is a photographer who decided that she would become a nurse. And she made friends with someone who is 20 years younger than she is. And they really hit it off, and they've been great supports for each other. And what Karen decided to do is to go with her colleague to the intensive care unit in New York City. And the title is Healing in the ICU During COVID-19. There are lots of black and white pictures. I urge you all to look at it. The link is right there. And then if you get a chance, go to Karen's own website, where she takes a lot of does incredible photography on a number of different areas that involve healthcare. So I urge you to tell your story in words and images. You own it. We don't need to have journalists or authors talking about nursing and about what nurses do. We can tell those stories. They're healing for us, and it lets the rest of the world know what we do. So on that note, before we go to questions, Millie, would you come on and walk us through an exercise?
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Gaffney and Dr. Kupchak. For today's mind-body exercise, I wanted to end our series by talking about ways to physically reduce our stress response, again, by using our senses. Today's exercise, I'm going to be talking about two different aspects. One, about the therapeutic aspects of aromatherapy, and secondly, reflexology. So these can be considered separately or combined, and can both be utilized at work or at home. Starting with aromatherapy, we know that it has real benefits for stress relief. It can help you feel energized, more relaxed, and more grounded in the moment. Emerging research suggests certain scents can actually alter our brainwave activity and decrease stress hormones in the body. While at home, you may also enjoy essential oils in the form of candles or infusers. But when you're out and about, you can use personal products such as inhaler sticks, clips like badge reel diffusers, and even necklaces. Aromas can really bring out memories of past experiences, and they can be comforting or not so much. So finding the essential oil that works to calm you down or to make you feel comforted is really important. Having said that, the National Association of Holistic Aromatherapy recommends several scents for stress and anxiety relief, like frankincense, geranium, lavender, and peppermint, to just name a few. Now moving on to reflexology. As a yoga instructor, we often say the issue can live in the tissues. So being able to gently give yourself a self-massage or using pressure points in specific areas may be able to help to ease your anxiety and stress as well. Reflexology is a type of therapy, and it works by using gentle pressure on specific points on your feet, your hands, and also your ears to help you to feel better and more grounded. The theory is that this eases stress and helps your body to function better. This can be combined with or without essential oils. Today, very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, I'm going to show you a 10-point hand technique that you can try anywhere, anytime, and doesn't take too much time. To start, you want to gently press, and I mean not to the point of pain, but gentle pressure to the tops of each nail. And when you're done with all 10 fingers, you'll start to press again on the sides of each nail. From there, you can begin to rub the top of each finger. And during this time, I'd ask you, as always, to be very mindful and conscious of your breath, remembering to breathe slowly through your nose and feeling your breath rise. After rubbing the tops of each finger, you'll do the same to the sides before beginning to gently pull on each finger, working from the base towards the tip. Now, nothing should be so hard that you feel any pain, of course. From here, you can gently begin to pull on the webbing between each finger before moving on to massaging the top of your hand. And so just by putting the thumb to the top of the hand in a gentle massage before coming to your wrists, massaging the middle point of your wrists, moving on to your hands. And I'm going a little bit faster than maybe you would want to in your own life, in real life, before finally coming to the center of your palm and applying gentle pressure. And just sort of massaging that area and meditating on the feelings and sensations of your hands. And if you have some aromatherapy that you've applied, just sort of smelling that and seeing what response that gives you. And I'll turn the floor back to Dr. Gaffney and Dr. Pepchek. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. And I was doing it right along with you. I think it's really important to have these things that you can do, literally when you're at work and just run out into the hallway and just walk through some of those things. So Dr. Morrow, do we have any questions or comments in these last few moments? I'm not sure if I'm not hearing Dr. Morrow or if there we go.
Technical issue. I was using my AirPods and sometimes they don't quite connect. So thank you.
Great.
So we had some wonderful comments that the session was quite informative and impactful, particularly the information on resilience. And a participant shared that a visual healing practice that she uses, taking 10 minutes to look at pictures of grandchildren, her children, and even her wedding album. So A question is, we did receive just a question just now. What are the pressure points supposed to evoke? And that it was a very helpful session. So Millie, can you tell us what the pressure points are supposed to invoke for us?
Yes, hi. Thank you for that wonderful question. These pressure points are thought to evoke the parasympathetic response. In other words, shifting us to a more calm state. If you've ever had acupressure or acupuncture, it's sort of very similar to that, using points in the body that in traditional Chinese medicine is thought of as relaxing the body. I've done it and I've actually have experienced relief, but I always say pair it with your breath for increased mindfulness, and really afterwards think of the sensation. Reflect for just a moment on the sensation in your hand, on the quieting of your breath. Thank you.
Thank you, Millie. And so I want to thank everyone again, our panelists. You were just fabulous. Dr. Gaffney, Dr. Pipchick, your words of wisdom about transforming helplessness are just wonderful. And we thank you for your contributions throughout this webinar series, your generosity of time, spirit, and expertise. And it's been quite helpful. And we'll live on through our recordings and all of the wonderful resources that you've shared with us. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts and wish you well as all of our participants. We thank you so much. Please do fill out the evaluations you've already received in your email. We want your feedback, and this is how you will get your continuing education certificate. You can also get certificates online for the recordings, so please do visit our Rutgers School of Nursing website. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morrow, and thanks to all of you for all the incredible work that you're doing. We're here for you. This is how we can best serve our colleagues. So if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to us or to through Dr. Manchester. We would like to be able to keep providing services for you. So thank you very much. Everyone have a good day.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you. And many thanks to Dr. Manchester and Marielle Rosario for your wonderful work and support. Thank you
so much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.